Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Nick Thompson. You may know me from Netflix Love is Blind, but on this podcast, we sit down with guests from all walks of life to hear their story, remove stigmas, and uncover what makes them tick. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Conversations with Nick Thompson. I'm your host, Nick Thompson. Today, we have an amazing guest on the show. Her name is Leeor Gal, or you may know her, or will know her soon, for her social media handle, The Therapy Gal. And I've recently become acquainted with Leeor through social media and listening to her podcast with her friend called Therapists Out of Office. And I heard them recently have a conversation about Therapy 101. And as I've been sort of strolling through, strolling is probably an interesting choice of word, but as I've been moving through my mental health journey, especially in the last few months with all the changes, there's been a lot of sort of foundational work that I've had to get back in touch with myself on. And listening to the episode of their podcast on Therapy 101 got me thinking about my mental health journey and where it started and, how far I've come, but also, in the elements where a lot of the things I'm working on are almost like starting over again to figure out, where did I misstep to sort of rebuild my confidence in myself and really understand the things that I want to work on, the things that I need to reevaluate, and the things that I need to get better at. Or another inspiration to me, a few weeks ago was someone reaching out to me after meeting in person, reaching out to me through DM, talking about how difficult it is for them to talk to others about their mental health challenges and therapy, and how they want to be able to have more conversations about the challenges that they're working to overcome, including how to start going to therapy. And so this to me felt like the universe was telling me, hey, I'm thinking back to the beginning of my mental health journey. I'm in a sense starting to reevaluate a lot of the things that I've learned and put them back into practice again, and how difficult it was to even get over that hump to figure out where to start. In a sense, sometimes before even reaching out to a mental health professional or a counselor or a therapist. And so all of these things kind of triangulated around to me thinking, this might be a great topic to talk to Leeor, who's a marriage and family therapist, licensed, of course, and have her on to talk about, where do you start when you're ready to begin your mental health journey. I also appreciate that one of the things Leeor is so good at is making therapy humorous and bringing her comedic personality into some of the content that she produces on TikTok and on Instagram, to the point where there's a couple of videos where I've literally laughed out loud because she's so funny, but they're so relatable. And so one of the things I think is so important for me and about this podcast and removing stigmas around these topics is making sure that we normalize not just the conversations or the serious educational pieces about, the different challenges that we're struggling with, but also to make them more relatable. And to make things relatable, sometimes you have to take sort of the educational element of it and put it into different formats like comedy or like sarcasm or into some sort of relatable content or relatable medium to communicate, so that people not just normalize talking about it, but find it more relatable and something that they can actually, normalize in their own head that, hey, I've had that feeling before, but it's not just serious, it's also funny. So I appreciate the way that she not just normalizes mental health, but puts it in a comedic fashion and puts some humor around it, so that, we can not always be so serious about it and have some humorous education behind it as well. So that, to me, especially when you're getting started, is hopefully going to be very helpful for some of us. and making therapy more relatable, especially as people are maybe trying to start their therapy journey. So I want to have Leeor on today to talk about picking a therapist. Where do you start? What types of resources are out there? If you don't have the privilege to get a therapist, and really try and figure out what it means to look internally, because we're all our own worst critic, and sort of have a conversation with ourselves, and maybe if needed, a conversation with others about how we can start being better for ourselves, silence our inner critic, let other people have less of an impact on how we feel about ourselves, and ultimately how you can start your mental health journey by simply looking inward. And additionally, some of the different ways you can go and interact with a potential therapist, or what you should look for, the types of questions you should ask yourself and a potential therapist. So where do you start in the mental health journey? Let's get into that. Leeor's hilarious. She makes me laugh. I would definitely follow her on social media if you're looking for a more humanized approach to learning about mental health. And we're going to talk a lot about insecurities, how to get started, how to look inward, and how to try and ignore some of the noise, especially if you're younger or engaging at the beginning of your mental health journey. So I hope you find this a entertaining and educational conversation. And I'm looking forward to this conversation with Leeor Gal right now, aka the Therapy Gal. So let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode. Our guest today is Leeor Gal, aka the Therapy Gal on social media. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist who specializes in relationships and transitional periods. She's the author of the mental health journal Empower Your Mind, and she co-hosts the growing in popularity Therapist Out of Office podcast. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Nick. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I'm excited to have you.
Yeah.
So I like to start off with some small talk questions to get to know you a little bit better and sort of break the ice. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Cool. First one I want to ask is one of my favorites that I've been asking everyone lately is, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Oh, I feel like it evolved as I was growing.
Everyone has, yeah.
Right. I remember like in elementary school when you'd create like these stars and it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And mine was always like singer and actress, which is so funny because I cannot sing and I try to act on my like social media. I don't know how good it is.
I find it funny.
You find it funny? Good.
Yeah.
But then I wanted to actually, when I was applying colleges, I wanted to go into interior design, which I didn't. But yeah, that was always an interest of mine.
You know what I think is so funny? And you're right. I feel like there's stages, and I've talked about this before, but like there's stages of what you want to be. And it's slowly, I feel like it's civilization and your education telling you where you can make the most money. And it just like starts shifting your perspective. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a WWE wrestler. And then I graduated to wanting to be a filmmaker and ended up in marketing. So it's like all these things, right?
Well, I guess filmmaking and marketing is pretty creative, pretty creative. So maybe that's sort of like that linear path that you took into marketing.
Yeah. And I'd love to see someone do a study where it's like, is there a link from that like childhood dream, you can do anything, before the world teaches you how things work?
Yeah.
If there's like any linear in that stuff. But I guess even interior design, you're still consulting people, right? You're helping them in different ways.
I just knew that I couldn't be in front of a computer. It was never going to be for me, ever.
Yeah. Well, telehealth came along to force you in front of a computer.
Well, it's different, right? No, you're right. That's a good point. I mean more so like looking at a screen and like punching in numbers or like data or analytics or whatever. For me, I have to be talking to somebody. I have to be engaged because then I completely lose focus.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
All right, so another question for you. What's a book, movie, or some piece of entertainment that you hate, but everyone else loves?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I wish you prepped me for this question.
Oh,
I
these are
feel
the
like,
hardest ones.
I know these are really hard. I feel like I definitely, okay. Okay. Wait, I don't want to say I hate. I'm going to lose followers
Dislike.
for
We'll
this.
say dislike.
Okay. Not even dislike, but I don't get the hype of, okay, wait for it.
I feel like I almost know where this is going.
Uh, Taylor Swift.
Oh.
Oh, I'm going to get canceled.
I think you just, plus I love Taylor Swift. So, so I think we should just end it here. Call it a day. Thanks for coming.
I think she's very talented. I think everything that she does is really, really great and inspirational, but I'm not obsessed. I don't think I'm obsessed with anything as much as people can have the obsession with Taylor Swift.
I'll give you that. I'm not going to argue that. I think it's like that too. It's funny because I remember like 12 years ago, I had an argument with my friend who was like, she's not talented. I'm like, she's talented. Like, you don't have to like her voice or think she's a good singer or think she's a good dancer, but like she's talented in branding and marketing. And I mean, I don't know if she still does, but I remember reading a long time ago, like even in her dressing room, like she decorates them, the interior design.
Oh.
And and so like picks the pattern on the furniture. And so she is very like talented and very self-aware, and she's an outstanding storyteller. Her progression from Teardrops on My Guitar to now is like, I mean, it's a character arc. It really is. So I don't think you're wrong there. But
it's more like that. It's not that I dislike, but it's just that I don't know if I guess I like my dog as much as other people like. And you can relate. Like your obsession with your dog is probably so. Is he over there?
Oh yeah, he's laying right here. Oh, he just looked up. It's like he knows we're talking about him.
Oh, what a good boy! See, like that makes me excited. I feel like that's how people feel about Taylor Swift. It's like that passion and excitement and love. And I just don't.
Yeah, I don't feel that way about other people. I will say that. Like I don't.
True.
I don't obsess over other people. I obsess over myself, you know, and I think sometimes people maybe project, you know, like wanting to feel something and they need to have it from somebody else, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. Absolute validation.
Yeah, exactly. All right. What would be your ideal superpower?
Being able to teleportation.
You Mine too. Yes. Can I ask why?
Because it's just such a hassle to like travel places. And I don't mean like
a waste of time.
Yeah. I don't mean like from one room to the next in my house, but like if I want to go to the beach because it's so freezing up here right now in Philly that I can just be like, boop, and maybe I'm in Australia at the beach.
That's how I feel. And I feel like I don't want to sit in traffic. Like in Chicago, we have so much traffic. I'm like,
I bet.
I don't want to sit in it. I don't want to waste time commuting. I just want to be like, boom, I'm home. Boom, I'm out. Boom, I'm with family.
Yeah.
Back home. Australia would be nice.
Yeah.
It's like 6 degrees here today. So I would really rather be anywhere warmer.
Wow. So, and you guys go outside and you walk because it's the city, right?
Yeah, I don't have a car.
Wow.
I know. I'm dreading the walk to the grocery store that's coming later today.
Oh gosh, that's terrible. I would just do pickup at that point.
Yeah.
Or delivery.
I did yesterday. I did get a delivery yesterday. I was like, forget this. I'm not even going to mess with this stuff.
Wow. So, I can't imagine.
All right. One more for you here. What is, or who, I guess, like who's a profile or someone on social media that you follow that you think is good content or good learning or something, and why?
Wow. To be honest with you, I love obviously the mental health field, and all the content that comes with it. But because all of my content is mental health, what I really like, who I really like to follow, and I don't know if I have like a specific person, to be honest, but I really love watching. Oh, I actually do, and I can share her stuff. I love cooking videos.
Okay.
Like that is my favorite. It actually calms me. It's Like
Oh,
I love cooking. I love baking. And I do a lot of vegan stuff, not because I'm vegan, but just because I'm dairy free. So it's just easier to do
gotcha.
it that way.
Yeah.
And I think her name's like Fit Green or something. And she does like a bunch of, vegan. She's like from Germany and she does a bunch of vegan recipes. And it's just, I actually make them. I watch and I make
Oh,
as I watch
wow.
it. Yeah. So that's like my favorite thing to follow on social media, which is so
That's
different.
awesome. Yeah, no, it is. It's totally different. I love that you make it because I feel like a lot of people follow these accounts and save these posts and then you forget about them, and that's me included.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
good for
I
you.
do a fair share of that as well, but I definitely, if something looks like really, really good, then I'm like, wow, I need to make that.
What's your like favorite dish that you've made?
Mm, I really, I really like to make fish. So like any salmon, like teriyaki
Mm,
salmon with vegetables, or I love making pizza. I've made
mm.
pasta from scratch before. It was really
Oh,
fun.
nice.
Yeah, but really I love sweets. So like
Mm,
anything chocolate is always a go-to
that's
for me.
very good. I actually like, I'm not a big chocolate person,
Mm,
but lately, like I've been getting into just like dark chocolate
yeah.
candy. Yeah. It's
Oh,
like, I'm not a big candy person. I used to have a sweet tooth. Now I'm like very salt driven. But
ah.
man, these Dr. Bronner's dark chocolate is like, huh, unbelievable and
Do I
vegan.
know this? Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's new. Like I feel like they don't even advertise it. They just advertise their like, soap, their
yeah.
Castile soap. And
Okay, it's the soap. Yeah, I was
yeah,
gonna
it's
say
this.
I know this brand.
Yeah,
They have chocolate. All
yeah,
right,
they
I'll have
do.
to
And it's
check it out.
delicious.
Wow. Wow. All right, that's gonna go on my list.
Cool. All right, cool. So what I want to ask you now, tell everyone a little bit about you, where you came from. We know you're from Philly or you're in Philly,
Yeah.
or just outside of. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how you and your path to becoming a licensed marriage and family therapist?
Absolutely. So yeah, right now I'm living in Philly, from New Jersey. But originally I'm from Israel, actually. So I moved to New Jersey when I was 8. And then I recently, 2 years ago, I moved to Philly. You didn't know that, huh?
I didn't know the Israel part. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I speak 2 languages. Actually, my mom's also Russian. So I can understand a little bit of Russian as well.
Oh,
But
wow.
definitely not fluent whatsoever. But yeah, so I moved here and then, did my path, school, all that fun stuff. And I went to college and I majored in communications with a concentration in public relations.
Mm.
I had an internship in Manhattan at the time when I was in college. And the way that I can describe it was like the Devil Wears Prada. Because I was in
Oh, wow.
beauty. I was in beauty and fashion PR.
Okay.
And it was very high paced, very like stressful. Everyone was very particular about everything. And I have ADHD and it was very much
Okay.
so undiagnosed at the time. So I was not so great at my job. Meaning like I was letting little things slide and I wasn't really as attentive, which is just like all the qualities of ADHD.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just really hard. And I graduated and I was like, wow, I just spent like 4 years of school and I don't even really like this. And I got a job in sales. And I was really not good at that job either.
Uh-huh.
So it was just
Sales
like,
is such a unique human being to be able to do that and the rejection that constantly comes with it.
oh yeah. And it's not even just like rejection from the people you're trying to sell to, but like the team that you're working on. Everyone is so cutthroat. The expectations
Mm-hmm.
are so high. You work 12-hour days. You have to make your quota. You have to just like be 100% all the time, which
Mm-hmm.
some people can do. And some people are really great at that. And I know that I'm not, and I wasn't. And I also, I think that when you're selling something, you have to, like, not everyone, but I needed to have some sort of passion towards it.
Yeah.
So I worked that job for like 5 months and I was like, I can't, I just have to quit. But before I quit, looks like you're about to ask. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Because I don't
Yes.
like public relations and I don't like sales. Should I go into advertising, marketing? I mean, all those things are really great, but it's also really hard to get a job in.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided I wanted to go into the medical field. And actually, before I wanted to be a therapist, I was going to go in for occupational therapy. So I did all the prerequisites. Well, first I quit my job. Then I did all the prerequisites, anatomy, biology, all that fun stuff. And then I applied to a bunch of different schools and I did not get into any of them. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I was waitlisted like 3 schools, but also it's such a competitive field to be in. Any like OT, PT, speech, like all of those are so hard to get into. And I was really devastated. I put in like 2 more years of school of work, and I was serving at the time. That was so hard for me. And I was devastated until I got a random email and it said, "Hey, we saw that you applied for this program, but we think you'd also be a good fit for this one." And it was the marriage and family therapy program at Jefferson in Philly. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I'll give it a try. And I went in for an interview and I got in.
Had being a therapist ever crossed your mind at this point? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
It has when I was younger. And I remember feeling like, who am I to be able to help somebody else with their mental health? Or how could I sit there while somebody tells me, some of their hardest stories and me not just like cry and feel so emotionally empathetic towards them and even drained. I mean, I didn't understand the concept of like compartmentalizing and also understanding that your clients are your clients and they're not a mirror into your, your own life, and that it does take work. But I didn't say yes to that opportunity. I mean, originally when I thought of it in like undergrad, I was like, no way, because I couldn't do it. Where in reality, it's the best decision I've ever made.
And I love that story too, because I feel like anybody, we actually talked about this, like going into or having that desire to go into something like mental health or becoming a counselor or a therapist, there's a ingrained empathy in you. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine every single person's going because they want to help others. Right.
Yeah.
And with that comes that feeling. So how did you overcome that feeling of worried about your empathy and learn to compartmentalize?
Yeah, honestly, I think it was just a lot of practice and almost not in a negative way, but almost like desensitization of I do this over and over and over and over again. I can't let it get to me because then I'm not going to be the best version of myself to my clients. Now, that doesn't mean that I just ignore my feelings and my thoughts, but I do work through them. You have, as a therapist, as an unlicensed therapist and a therapist in grad school, you have supervisors. So you talk about this in supervision. Once you are licensed, you create your own supervision group with your own colleagues, and you always talk with other people about your cases so that you're not just feeling alone in whatever situation that you're in.
Oh, I can't, I can't imagine doing that without having that type of support system.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. It's so important.
So you went and you decided to accept the challenge. What was that final kick that had you say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn to compartmentalize. I'm going to go full force all in?
Honestly, I was just spontaneous. So I'm the kind of person, let me explain this. I'm the kind of person that like my anxiety doesn't stop me from doing things. It's once I'm already in it that I'm like, oh crap, what did I do? And I think that I got that feeling like a year into grad school where I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so hard. Like, what did I do to myself? Maybe there's a way out. And I also have come to realize that a lot of students feel that way in therapy programs because it is a lot. And you're being a therapist as well as taking classes and being a student, which is just like a lot. But I had that oh crap moment actually a year in rather than in the beginning. In the beginning, I was like, hell yeah, like I can do this. This is going to be so great. And I'm going to make friends and I'm going to help people and I'm going to, and it's going to be so much fun. And I mean, it was amazing and I did make friends and I did have so much fun, but it was also really hard. So it happened.
Yeah, I feel like that's a normal feeling though, right? You're like bright-eyed,
Yeah.
bushy tail because you look at it at that point. To you, it was kind of what the brand was. I'm going to go help people. I'm going to help
Yeah.
people navigate through challenging circumstances, challenging ways of thinking, and all of that stuff. And then you get in it, and you're just like, oh, there's like real challenges here. It's not, it's more than the
Oh
brand.
yeah. Oh yeah. And in grad school, you get faced with everything. They want you to
Mm-hmm.
have as much experience as possible. We were in shelters and, in different, areas in Philadelphia. And it was a lot. It was really hard emotionally to see some of these
Mm-hmm.
families and just the resources that they have and the privilege that, some do and some don't, that it was very, very taxing emotionally. And at the same time, I would go home and I would be like, maybe I did something for someone today. Maybe I did something for that person. And that's just good enough.
Oh, that's good. That's a nice way to look at it. It's a peaceful way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how did you decide? So, I know you like working with teens. You work with couples, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the what are some of the things that you like to help people, learn about themselves and learn in their relationships? Especially, let's start with teens because I feel like
Yeah.
that's such a thinking back to being a teenager. Heck, now half the time I'm like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'm thinking and why I'm feeling this way. So
Yeah.
teens, it's that times 1,000. So what are some of the things that you work on with some teens?
Yeah, I think being a teenager is one of the hardest times of your life because there's so much transition happening. And that's really my focus with a lot of people, even with young adults. I,
Mm-hmm.
I think your whole life is made up of so many different transitions, but I feel like that time of your life is so transitional that it feels so overwhelming. And I know that I've experienced that myself. I was an angsty teenager. I was a, wild young adult. Like I've made my mistakes. I've done some things in my
Yeah.
past. And I know that at the time I was very fortunate to have parents that I could go to. Not everybody does. And so I want to make sure that nobody feels, and especially teenagers, that they don't feel alone in what they're going through and that they can open up and be real. And when I say real, I even mean something like going to a party and having alcohol or doing
Yeah.
this and, having that happen to you. That I'm not there to judge anybody because I know that that can feel really intimidating, especially for teenagers. But that I'm here to listen. I'm here to help. I'm here to, be that sounding board. Not to give advice because I can't do that, but I think transitions, anxiety, ADHD, depression are just like some of the big topics that I talk about with my clients.
I can't imagine, and I've shared on this show before, like mental health was stigmatized for me most of
Mm,
my life, which is one of the reasons I like to talk about it on this show. And I just remember like learning from a friend of mine in high school what anxiety was and what
yeah.
depression was. I had no idea, which is crazy, right? Yeah,
Wow.
which
In
is
high school.
crazy. In high school, I didn't know. I went to a Catholic school until high school,
Mm,
and it's kind of talked about, but it's talked about in like a total different framework.
hmm
So, now I feel like it's great that we talk about it more, but it's also an amplified problem because now all of these teens who are dealing with, bullying or self-doubt or hormonal changes or figuring out what they want to do with their life, it's all amplified now by social media. So,
Yeah.
you know, what do you see or how do you see with your clients and your experience social media impacting positive and negative some of the relationships teens have with one another and with themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I think now with like TikTok, mostly I would say where people are just like ruthless on that app and
Oh,
some of
they're
the things.
ruthless on TikTok too.
Yeah. Oh, worse.
Oh,
What than Instagram? Way worse.
oh
Way
wow.
worse than
Okay,
Instagram.
I didn't know. I'm not that on TikTok. I hop on, post, and leave.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Don't read the comments then because
Oh,
it's crazy what happens on there. I know that I get a lot of hate and For me, it doesn't matter, but I really
You
think
can't
about,
read the comments. That's the
yeah,
advice I get from everyone who has a following. Don't read the comments.
yeah. But if you're just, a teenager and you're posting with your friends, like a silly TikTok dance, and you want to like look at the comments and, this and that, and you see just like hate and bullying, that's going to affect you in ways that, you wouldn't even think. And and it can be really subconscious, the impact that it has on you. So I definitely think that people are more online, and everyone feels a lot more brave on social media behind a screen than they do in real life, because I think that some of the things that we see written are not things that somebody would actually say.
I call them the keyboard mob.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, because it's safe. And also, like, what's the point? To me, it's who hurt you, right? Hurt people hurt people. And so that with being a teenager, and for men it's different. For women, your brain doesn't develop until 25. I think for men it's maybe 26. Like, it could be wrong.
Older, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit older.
It's a little older. I know that.
There's a reason. No, okay. But but you have your brain, and it's telling you to do one thing. You're not understanding the consequences that you might have for your actions, and the impact that it can have on somebody else. So it really does affect, especially somebody who's very young. It's going to affect them in ways that are going to even be, I mean, you might not be able to reverse the impact that it has.
That's really scary to think about. I know, like, I've told this story before, but like, I get a lot of mean comments and stuff, and I'm comfortable with myself. Like, so sometimes they still stick with me. There was when was this? Like last week, that is still sticking with me. And I don't know why. So as a teenager who's developing and trying to find their place, trying to really figure out who the heck they are in this world, to have, these outside influences and new channels, right? You used to get the channels when you would interact in person in school or in a sporting event or in theater or, extracurricular activity. Now it's nonstop. Every time you pick up your phone, there can be, negativity coming in. And I don't even know how someone who's young trying to navigate can even navigate that.
Absolutely. I think too, if you're listening out there and you relate to what Nick is saying, if you receive a comment about you, even if it's from a friend or a hater online
or family,
oh my gosh, family, that's a really tough one. Sit down and write 5 reasons why that's not true.
I love that. And I'm stealing that.
Yeah, as you should, because we sit there and we might feel really consumed by what was said, or it might hit an insecurity for us, or it might make us feel less than in some capacity, where, like you said, Nick, you feel very secure in yourself. What that tells me is that there's at least 5 things that you feel secure about that actually combat this negative, unprovoked, silly comment that somebody across the screen in a different country even maybe would say about you, someone that doesn't know you at all.
That's so true. And that's something that I've always taken sort of a solace in, is like, I don't have to be friends with everyone. Like, you can take it or leave it. But it's taken a long time to get to that point, and a lot of work. And the problem that I find, at least with me, and I'm sure this is with others, it's like that I call them the inner critic. Like, they're the one that never likes the movie. They're the one that never likes the book, right? They're the one that hates Taylor Swift, right?
I was waiting for that. I knew it was coming.
And so, I feel like that inner critic, like, first you've got to kind of like work to silence them, but then they get fed, by these comments or by these people that say these things. And if you haven't, done the work, like write down 5 reasons that this isn't true, or, talk to your inner critic and tell them, like, you're wrong about this. It's very challenging. Like, the world is so harsh. And to your point, social media gives everybody a platform to be cruel and project their own personal challenges on others. It's just, and then everyone's sitting around like projecting on each other and we're not making any progress.
Yeah. And when you say projecting on each other, I definitely want to explain that to maybe somebody that wouldn't understand what that means.
Please
Typically,
do.
a projection is most of the time, it's actually something that we feel about ourselves that we place onto somebody else. So let's say I don't like the way that my hair looks. I will go out in public and I'll either say, everybody hates my hair. Everyone hates my hair. It looks so ugly, even if nobody says it. Or I'm out there noticing everyone else's hair and what that looks like and judging everybody else's hair. And that can be very dangerous and damaging because we're constantly are so hyper aware of this one thing that we feel insecure about.
I have to say, I'm glad you explained that. And I want to share a personal story because I think it's something that is so relatable. So anybody who watched me on Love is Blind saw on my wedding day how profusely sweating I was. One of my biggest insecurities, and I'm not even exaggerating, that I accepted like I'm never going to feel good about this, is that when it's humid, I sweat. If it's 60 and humid, I'm sweating like it's 100 and humid. Yeah. So it might as well just be 100 and humid. And so to like have my insecurity like that taken and then shown to the whole world was such a
vulnerable.
Yeah. Like I gotta tell you, like I was so nervous about that. And that's like one of two things that I'm still insecure about. But it's almost like I just embrace it as part of my character now. Like, yep, 60, I'm sweating. So, but, having that feeling inside of me for so long, because I've sweat for my whole life, like to the point where I would be uncomfortable at school and I would like ask to go to the bathroom just to run my hands under cold water to try and like cool down, which sounds like silly when I think about it now. But even when I was working, when I would go to work, like on a summer day or a humid day, I would have what I call commuter clothes, which was like dry fit. And then my actual clothes would be in my, I can't believe I'm talking about this like this. My actual clothes would be in my, my backpack and I would change when I got to work. And so it's totally fair for someone to be insecure and then to have, to understand like what projecting is and how it can, how maybe you can, help yourself not do it onto other people.
Yeah. And I'm actually, I know you just said, I can't believe I'm sharing this. And I'm also really glad that you are, because I bet you so many people out there are going to relate to this.
Oh, they do.
Believe it more than you want. Right before this, I had a session about sweating with a client and their experience with sweating. And you know what I said to that client? It's different now because I'm on different health insurance, but I used to get Botox in my armpits so that I wouldn't sweat because I would sweat so much.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So it's so not funny, but it's so interesting.
It's relatable.
It's relatable that you're sitting here and you're expressing this, where in reality, like I did watch Love is Blind and I don't have that memory at all. Like when you bring it up, I guess I can remember that, but after that scene, I saw that once and I didn't care about it at all, because we're all very self-centered people where we're always just looking at ourselves rather than other people. And even if you do embarrass yourself in front of somebody, it is for a split second and they're going to forget about it because everyone is so self-absorbed that even when you're talking about sweating, I was like, oh, I'm sweating. I'm feeling sweaty right now, rather than like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. Because I mean, that's a natural body reaction that we have. You're detoxifying. Like, it's good that you're sweating, honestly.
I had someone that used to tell me like, oh, it's good to sweat because you're just constantly detoxing. And I just tell myself that too. But it's funny because I did get so many DMs and people reaching out saying that like they experience the same thing, or now they don't feel so bad going out in public when it's hot. And it's like, oh, I mean, good. I'm glad. I still wish I didn't sweat so much, but at least I'm helping other people.
Well, hopefully it's more so recognizing that it's not so strange that it happens to you, and it actually is just a very normal body response. That some people are sweatier than others, like some people are hairier than others.
Yeah, exactly. So on the projecting, like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you help your clients or, teenagers or whomever when to start identifying that they're maybe projecting onto someone else instead of looking inward?
Yeah. So typically when someone says like, I mean, in any story, well, I can't think of anything specific right now, but in any, if you were to come up to me and you were like, hey, Leeor, I really noticed that that person makes me feel really uncomfortable because of the way that they're talking to me and the way that this and the way that that, I'll typically say, well, what are they saying to you? Express that to me. And if it doesn't really seem like there's much negativity going on, objectively speaking, obviously how something lands in your nervous system is just how it lands. I typically ask, like, is this something maybe that you feel about yourself that is coming out through that conversation with that person? Or is that person reminding you of someone in your life that you really dislike, or even a parent, and you're feeling very reserved or combative? And so just really, like you said, being introspective and self-aware of like, okay, what is my trigger here? What is coming up for me? And how do I want to approach it? Or how much am I going to let this affect me?
Oh, I think that's like a good exercise to do, right? Like write it down again, maybe. I don't know. I'm putting words in your mouth, but
yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah.
Write it down.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very well said. I'm so different now than I was 6-7 years ago. It's so funny to think back, but even like the projecting thing, like I didn't know I was doing it when I was doing it. So it's like, and it would be on really silly. The hair thing's funny because now I'm going to share the other thing I'm very insecure about, and it's my hair. Like I hate my hairline, and
interesting.
yeah, and it's just like my whole family is, all the men are bald, and it's I'm doing everything I possibly can, a lot of product, a lot of help, but it's, I used to like not hate, but I used to get so frustrated with people that had like a full head of hair, and I would always talk negatively if a dude had a nice hair day. And it took me so long to kind of like circulate around what was going on there, or why I would always get so frustrated by that. And it's so silly, but like it is like it's tough to look at those things and look internally instead of externally.
Yeah, it's way easier to blame somebody else or to be mad at somebody else than to be mad at ourselves. And I also think, like, especially if you're in the public eye and you were on a TV show, we record this, we see each other. And especially like now that the world is virtual, you're always looking at yourself. I know even for me, when Maggie and I on our podcast, Therapist Out of Office, when we're recording, we're looking at ourselves and I'll be like, oh my gosh, why did I have my hair like that? And Maggie's like, crop it this way, crop it that way. Like, we can't do it like that. But realistically, when she talks about herself, I'm like, I don't see that. And when I talk about myself, Maggie's like, I don't see that. So we are our own worst critics, and nobody notices what we notice.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. And I love that. I think that's why your podcast takes so long to edit, if you guys are like recropping. And I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's not. We put so many filters. No, I'm kidding. We don't.
Filters are God's gift and a detriment, because I feel like some people message me and they're like, how is your skin so smooth? Or how is I'm like, the Paris filter, like that's how.
I do love that filter.
I know it's the best one. Yeah. One of the things that I really like about your approach to therapy on social media, and I shouldn't say therapy, your approach to your content on social media, is that you make it funny, and funny is relatable, right? And it almost creates a space where someone can relate to something that they may be uncomfortable relating to in a serious piece of content or conversation, right? So the one I always think of is the reel that you did in between sessions about running to the bathroom as a therapist.
Yeah.
And that one and the Ross I'm fine one were my two favorites. But what's your reasoning and your approach to making some of these, higher level concepts of therapy relatable through comedy and through humor?
Yeah. So first of all, I love making people laugh. I love being funny. I think there's this like stigma out there that like women aren't as funny as men. And I like to, or stigma stereotype, sorry. And I like to break that. And I think that I enjoy making content that isn't so heavy because the world is so heavy. And especially when we think of therapy, we think of it as like such deep, internal, heavy work where it is at times, definitely is. And at times it can just be very freeing and just relatable and funny and destigmatizing. And that's sort of just my approach, even in therapy. Like I am definitely a very serious therapist, but I'm also not like that like Freud type. I don't know if you've ever heard of Freud, but like just this like very serious, like psychoanalytic type that's like just very pondering. That's not my style. And so when people, even my clients, if they'll like listen to my podcast or they'll, see my social media, they'll tell me like, Leeor, you are exactly the same you are here as you are in your social media. And I'm like, good, because I want to be who I am, not who people think I should be like. So.
Well, I find that also very true with both you and Maggie, because I've met you both around the same time. And by meeting, I mean, I followed you and then DM'd you, but
yeah.
and vice versa. Yeah. But I thought that was one of the coolest things is you two seem, your content isn't overproduced to the sense, and Maggie draws her stuff and you're hilarious with the approach where, a lot of times I feel like it's too textbook that it becomes unrelatable. And, and I actually want to ask you about this in a minute too. Like when I found my therapist, this is my second one. I've been seeing her for 6 years now.
Wow.
One of the reasons that I like her so much is because she's relatable. And I feel in a sense like she might be me 5 years further in life than where I am. So, she is sarcastic. She's dry. She's, so we relate on that. So she makes, she can share her personal experiences and make them relatable to the way that like the lens at which I view the world for. And I think that's so important when you're destigmatizing something, but also to just kind of make it relatable. Cause if you're just getting started in therapy journey, right? In your therapy journey, it's going to be overwhelming to go read a lot of text about whatever it is that you're trying to learn about yourself. And the way that you're able to even sort of define projecting in layman's terms is very, it's a very good place for someone to start, which brings me to my question. If someone, maybe particularly younger, like a teenager or someone who hasn't been to therapy before, but maybe wants to begin that journey, what type of tactics or advice would you give them in terms of maybe finding the right therapist, or even if they're a step before that of kind of researching what it is that they want to work on?
Yeah, I would say teenager, typically the parents are involved. So having, if possible, of course, it's always good from a systemic lens, having family involved is really important as a young adult. Also, but I think interviewing your therapist, number one, is so important. Like, how are you going to help me? What population have you worked with? Have you ever worked with somebody like me? What is your style? What kind of tools do you use? What type of therapy you subscribe most to? Meaning, like, are you CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, DBT? Do you do EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing? A lot of acronyms here. But it's also important to understand what it is that you want to work on and find a therapist that matches that goal. Meaning, for example, if you're going in for CBT or if you're if you want to work on OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder,
Mm-hmm.
and you come to me, I would have to tell you, I don't specialize in that. I don't specialize in OCD. I don't do exposure response prevention. I don't have the certifications. I don't work with clients on a very serious level of OCD. So we would have that conversation, and what the therapist would have to do then is refer you out to somebody that would be a better fit. So having that conversation in that initial phone call, which not every therapist does the consultations, the like free 15-minute consultations. I would highly recommend for you to find a therapist that does, though, if possible, because you want to know. And I think the therapist should know if you're going to be a good fit for them as well.
Right. I think that's a good point. And I often think people who are just getting started, and this was me, like I knew I needed to kind of have a vibe with someone, but I didn't know what it was. And it's not until I look back to realize why it ended up working for me.
Yeah.
But just starting with that initial conversation, what are some of the questions that they should ask, aside a little step deeper than I suffer from anxiety and I want to learn how to better manage it?
Mm-hmm. In the 15-minute free consultation?
Yeah, exactly. In a consultation or a first meeting.
Yeah. Well, first, those are two very different things, because 15-minute consultations are just very like kind of above the surface and very like, this is, like you said, this is what I'm coming in for. Have you worked with someone like me? You know, yada, yada, yada. Like, do you think you can help me? How would you help me with this? What have you done in the past can be a question. Versus a first session. Now, every therapist kind of conducts their first session a little bit differently. But for me, I go into a lot of the history taking, a lot of childhood, a lot of family and support systems and friends, relationships, work, you know, everything that makes you who you are. So first sessions are typically a lot of questions from the therapist rather than the client having, you know, to come up with content to talk about. It's a little bit different for sure.
Yeah, I can't remember if I did a phone consultation, but I think it's good for people to sort of get a list of those questions that they need answered to find, because it is true. And I know you guys had an episode on this on Therapists Out of Office, but like choosing the right therapist, like if you don't, that's okay. Like if you need to change, that's okay. You have to find someone that can meet you where you are, and you can, you know, meet them with their skills and expertise. So I always encourage anyone who wants to test it out, you know, don't get discouraged and take your time to feel comfortable so that you can actually benefit from it, and take your time to find the right one.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like you said before, you've been working with your therapist for 6 years now. That's a long time. If you love them, then amazing and great. And if you realize, hey, I still want to continue with therapy, but I don't feel like this therapist, maybe I've outgrown them or they've helped me so much in X and I need more help in Y. That's also a good reason to go out and find a new therapist. Doesn't mean that therapist is bad or negative or something, you know, whatever, but that you want a different perspective on things. And that's absolutely appropriate.
Absolutely. One of the things you mentioned earlier, and I feel like this is a good time to bring it up again, but the judging. So I feel like people, and I do too. I remember there's a couple times where I went in and I'm like, I don't really want to tell my therapist this. I think she's going to judge me. I think she's going to be upset with me. I am going to have one of those sessions tomorrow where I'm going to go and talk to her. And I'm already feeling like she's going to be like, why did you do that? But, you know, how do you overcome those feelings when you are going, whether it's a new therapist or current, you know, to let go of the fact that they're not there to judge you. They're there to help you.
Yeah. So therapists are just as fallible as anyone in this world. I, by no means, am a perfect person. I make many, many mistakes. And so for me as a therapist to judge somebody else on whether it's a mistake or a decision they made or, you know, whatever, would be so hypocritical and so ridiculous of somebody to do, because I just don't see how anyone can judge anyone. Everyone has their own special life and they live it how they want to live it. People are going to have different values and morals, sure, but if you're feeling like your therapist is actually judging you or you're feeling some negative feedback, then that's a problem. Like that's not okay. You shouldn't feel that way. I would then recommend to speak with your therapist about it. Or if you're feeling really unsafe, then like you can terminate with that therapist. But yeah, I definitely urge you to share any uncomfortable thing in therapy, because all your therapist can do is help you with what you bring them. And if you don't bring them anything, then really, what are you paying for?
Oh, that's true. And that's the thing too. I try to remember to myself, and it's a lot easier now. And sometimes I feel like she probably is not as surprised as I think she is when I share something that I'm nervous about.
Yeah.
But I feel like, sometimes you're almost judging yourself, and it's that projecting thing. Like you're projecting them judging you, based on you kind of judging yourself. And, it comes back kind of to that in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. And something that I did say in our podcast about, like, I think it's called like Therapy 101, where I'll have clients and they'll come to me and be like, you're going to be mad at me. And I'm like, why? Why am I mad at you? And then they'll tell me and I'm like, I'm not mad at you. Like, I'm so happy that you told me. That takes courage. And that is so amazing. Let's talk through this. I think it's natural to want to impress somebody or show somebody that you're putting in the work or, prove that you're your best self. But like, that's just not going to be the reality. And that's also okay.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Last thing I want to ask you on this topic here. So you're, not you, as a person is like, okay, I know I want to work on this. I want to start my therapy journey, or I want to evolve my therapy journey. What are some, especially maybe let's start with teenagers again, but just in any relationship, what are some safe ways and productive ways to have that conversation with the people that would be impacted, whether that be family, whether that be friends, whether that be a partner?
Impacted by you starting therapy?
Yeah. If you want to share, or maybe you want to start, therapy with a family member, or you want to start therapy with, a partner. Or tell your parents as a teenager struggling, I think I need to start my therapy journey.
Yeah. I think as a teenager, there might be different ways to approach it, such as you can go to your school counselor and you can tell them that you're struggling and they can help you talk to your parents. You can just talk to your parents, of course, and explain, like, I've really been struggling. My friend Jen is really enjoying this therapy, and I'd like, to do that as well. She's had a lot of benefits from this. Like, if you need to talk to her parents, you can, but I feel like this is really important for me. And if your parents are very against therapy, let's say like you're really trying and they're like, no, no, no. Age of consent in most states, every state is a little bit different. So you'd have to, I don't know, Illinois, but like Pennsylvania and New Jersey, it's 14. So you can actually consent to therapy on your own. You don't need your parents' permission to do it. You don't need a slip from your parents to start therapy. Now, with that being said, of course, there's a cost to therapy, but then there's, a bunch of different resources that you can try. And even the school can be helpful with that you don't necessarily need your parents' permission to start therapy if you are in high school and, of course, college, etc. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's great. It's really great because and also what that means, age of consent, means that like from age 14, again, in PA and New Jersey, I don't know other states.
Just Google your state. Yeah. Google age of consent if you're curious.
For therapy. Yeah. And what that means is that your therapist actually cannot speak to your parents about you without your written permission, without your written consent. So that's also really, really great and protective of teenagers, obviously young adults, etc.
And I think, like, if I think back to my own experience, like starting therapy in high school, when I really started to sort of understand what was going on in my own mind, would have probably been incredibly helpful if I knew that was an option.
Oh, absolutely. And when I was in high school, I think I was just so like, like,
oh my God, totally.
And my parents came to me and they were like, you should probably try therapy. And I was like, okay. And it was great. You know what I mean? Like that was so wonderful. And my sister has had therapy before. So I think that naturally when it came to me, she's older than me. When it came to me, it was just kind of like, okay, let's just like give this a try and see what happens.
And how old were you?
My first time in therapy, I was 17.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
but
good.
That's
good.
Well, I needed it earlier. I needed it way sooner, but that's fine. 17 was good enough.
I mean, I think that's awesome that you were able to have the opportunity. And I think back, my parents divorced when I was 5 and like there was no anything back then. And it's just so like, I've had to like go back and, you know, basically tell young Nick things are okay.
Yeah.
To sort of try and unravel some of those behaviors that I developed by just not having, you know, any support there. And it's hard to talk about those things now sometimes, and even to like go back and think about it. So if you're, you know, I just want to say, if you are struggling, you're not alone. And it doesn't matter if you're 5, 15, 25, 37, like I am, 50, it's not too late to go back and, you know, continue to, improve yourself and get better, with the guidance of a licensed professional.
Yeah. And therapy does not discriminate against age, gender, race, etc. Especially, you know, like you said, with being a man and growing up and not really feeling like maybe you were allowed to be emotionally expressive it can be really damaging. And especially growing up and then being expected to be in relationships and having that openness. If you felt like you couldn't open up before, can you open up now? Or maybe is it more of like that, like emotional floodgate opening up, right? So understanding emotion regulation and, you know, allowing each and every person the accessibility. You know, again, I know that there's a lot of privilege with therapy, but there are a lot of resources as well, for everyone.
Yeah. And so with that, I want to ask you, you know, if we have someone listening who maybe doesn't have the therapy resource right now, like what are some baseline areas they can start to like maybe understand themselves until that becomes a realistic opportunity?
Yeah, I would stay away from self-help books. Number one, that is what I would stay away from. I would say start
That's the
reading.
second thing you're going to get canceled for, by the way.
Oh, well,
I'm just kidding.
They're not really helpful. They're kind of like minimizing. I feel like they don't really engage in the deeper work. And that's why, like, to answer your question right now is really hard because nothing can be, you know, as a replacement for therapy, because therapy is very individualized and like everyone is so different. Yeah. And so self-help books is kind of like supposed to be one size fits all when like that's just not going to be the case. Yeah. So I would say like even finding like prompted journals or like reading books that are written by literal licensed therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, like that, if you don't have access to an actual therapist, but wanting to gain some of that perspective, is like the people that have recently blown up, like Brene Brown, Esther Perel, Kristen Neff. She talks a lot about like self-esteem. She has a workbook. So like reading those, doing the workbooks, and just working on yourself until you can get the help, that I think would be a good start.
Yeah, I think too. And again, I have the privilege of going to therapy once, sometimes in the last year and a half, twice a week, maybe 1 or 2 times, 3 times a week. But the real thing I think people can start with, at least from my perspective, which kind of led me to therapy, was I was sat down one day and I was like, why am I so unhappy? And I wrote it out. And it was so therapeutic in a sense of like, I could let go of some of the things that I really shouldn't have, that were out of my control, and then hone in on the things that were my control and recognize like, I need help with this. Yeah. So I don't know if that's Nick's crazy recommendation from personal experience, but like, it might be a good place to start. So you can at least figure out what type of content or workbook or reading you want to start with, so you just don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah, exactly. Starting small. I love that
Yeah.
example. That's a really good one.
Oh, thank you. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I want to pass it over to you for any questions you have that you want to ask me.
Yeah. I guess I'm curious if you're willing to share, but how are you going to get through sharing some of your most intimate personal insecurities with all of the listeners?
It's a really, really good question. It's funny because as we were talking about sweating earlier and my hair and my hairline and all of that stuff, I had the privilege, let's just say, of it being broadcast to the whole world. And, hilariously enough, one of the first people that reached out to me was a hair transplant specialist. And it was like right after the show aired. And it was just like, oh, okay, so people are noticing that and the sweating. Okay, cool. So these are my two things that I'm insecure about. And everyone's noticing. So what I when I think about like my insecurities, and I work through them all the time, I just really try to ask myself, like I said earlier, to the inner critic, like, does this matter? Like, do you really feel this way? Do you really care if someone does care about me sweating or having, a thinning hairline? Is that really the kind of people that I care what they think? And the answer is no. I genuinely care to put my most authentic self out there. I always say I'm unapologetically myself. That doesn't mean that I'm not wrong a lot. That doesn't mean I don't screw up. But, I put myself out there with the best intentions and just myself. And to your point earlier, when someone's like, oh, how I see you on social media is exactly how you are in the therapy office. Nothing makes me feel more at peace when I know I'm putting my authentic self out there and people see it.
Yes.
And so people message me, people say it, my friends say it. And they're like, oh, it's just you, but you were on TV. And it's people I know and people I don't know that say that. And it's one of the most satisfying things because it means that I'm actually being myself. And that's what I would say to everyone. When you're insecure about something that's beyond your control or insecure about something that, your inner critic is telling you, just remember that you can have a chat with your inner critic at any time and put them in their place. And if you are authentically yourself, you're in control of what you bring to the world, and just bring that authentic self. And other people that don't like that, you don't need them. You don't want them.
Exactly. You want to like you first.
Exactly.
And then you want to be around the people that also like you for who you are. And
exactly.
That's
and that
all
matters.
Yeah.
That really matters more than people think. Like your circle and the people you surround yourself with, you become a product of them. So if you're always around, people who are gossiping or people who are, talking negatively about other people, if that's who you want to be, cool, stay there. But if it's not, go find your crew and be around the people that talk about and, act on the things that you want to talk about and act on.
Yeah. Quality over quantity too.
Exactly. Which is why I have 6 friends. And that's
same. Very much same. That's the important thing. Oh, I love that. But no, that was it. I mean, I just was so curious, and thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. I think that's so important because it does, you're right. It speaks to the authenticity and the transparency that we have as, especially people online. We want to be real.
Yeah. And I can tell you, like, it's being online, and we're online different ways, right? Like I woke up one day and I had hundreds of thousands of followers, who, by the way, followed me for my relationship. They didn't follow me for me. They didn't follow me for my thoughts, my ideas, my content. They followed me for my relationship. And, it means that there's going to be a lot of unhappy people that are following me. And a lot of, projecting, we'll just say. And it's hard. It's hard. Yeah. Opinions. It's hard. But like, if you stay true to yourself, like once the initial maybe shock wears off, if you're just being yourself, like find comfort in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Online
Amen.
and in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Be you.
Yeah,
Be
exactly.
real.
Exactly. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So on Instagram, you can find me at the Therapy Gal, but there are underscores, unfortunately. So it's the underscore therapy underscore gal. And then also, if you're looking for therapy, I do have a group practice. And we do offer therapy in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So if you live there, we can work with you. TikTok, I'm also the Therapy Gal. And then our podcast, Therapist Out of Office with Maggie Lancioni. And yeah, shout out. I mean, let me know if you listen to this and you started following me. I would love to hear from you guys. And thank you, Nick, so much for giving me this opportunity.
Absolutely. And I can say I've listened to I don't think I listened to the last one, most of the episodes of Therapists Out of Office. It's a great listen. And I also will make sure we link everything down in the description. So you can just click through and hit the follow button or the listen button. And thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Conversations with Nick Thompson. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to follow us and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Links can be found in the description below, and we can't wait to see you next time.